because what happens which is why I started with basketball and it's so important to who I am today. Basketball is important to who I am today because it showed me physically that I can do anything. My body can stand the pressure of anything. I mean, as a 41-year-old, I'm trying to tell myself that again. It's a lot different than 41.
I'm working on it too.
But I also understood that something that Michael Jordan always said, if you think about when he retired, Michael Jordan said he didn't retire because he felt like his body could go 4 or 5 more years. He couldn't endure the mental that it took to be great. So the thing that I realized at 13 is the mental fortitude, the mental toughness, the discipline, and the resiliency that it takes to be great at something, that's key. Like, I had to train myself to say, like, I didn't have any coaches. So I look now, kids have YouTube, they have coaches, there's all these things to help you get better. For me, it was just about understanding who was the competition around me, understanding what was my best attributes to the game, and figuring out what's the quickest way I can get 2 points in the basket, buckets, the ball in the basket, get the 12 before anybody else scores. That was my mission, if that makes sense. So for me, and Coach Mike's point, the social acceptance, you starting to get socially accepted because now your legend is born, right? You start to realize it starts with me being horrible, then doing the work. Then I'm beating on the kids in my projects, right? Then I'm beating on the adults in my projects. Then the people in my projects start taking me to other projects and start saying like, okay, who's this 13-year-old, 14-year-old playing with these adults? And they're just like, watch them play. And then you start to get confidence and realize like, hey, this feels good to invest time, be disciplined, see the results. Can this also work in the classroom? Does this same work ethic, discipline work in the classroom? It does. Does the same discipline, work ethic work in business? Hell yeah, it does. Because it's the foundation that I learned through basketball and the mental toughness that it takes to play the sport is the same thing that I've transferred over into my life as an entrepreneur. And that same grit and savviness to no different than when you realize you need to learn how to go left because they're taking your right away, right? No different than when you're in a boardroom or in a meeting and you got to quickly pivot and then learn like, hey, I have a weak spot. I need to go strengthen it up or this can put me out of business. It's the same. The concepts are exactly the same. One is just a business action. The other one is a physical action, but the action is the same. Well, the thing was, I realized that Will Smith always says it. He's willing to down the elliptical machine. Think about that. Think about that. That means he's willing to go on the elliptical machine and not stop. Where most people's legs are going to give out, most people's chests are going to burn. He's willing to die on it. Actually, he said the treadmill. He's willing to die on a treadmill. So the thing that I realized that people weren't willing to put in the work I was willing to put in, right? So hard beats talent. Hard work beats talent when talent don't work hard. So for me, I knew I had some talent. I knew I had some God-given ability. So I realized very quickly that if I'm Surrey and I'm on a skate park and if I'm falling 3 times, but then I get the trick on the 4th, then I get better on the 5th and the 6th, and I master it on the 7th, that means every 7 tries, I got a new trick. So that means how long does that take? An hour? So if I'm out here 12 hours a day for 20 days, I'm gonna have 50 tricks. Now I'm gonna travel park to park and my legend is gonna be born because now I got a better arsenal of tricks than everyone else. So the thing I quickly realized was A, I got a skill set. B, as I went from park to park, I realized that the things that people were trying to take away from my game. First, it was my right hand, so I got a left hand. Then it was me going to the hoop, so I got a mid-range jump shot. Then it was to try to body me out, so I knew they couldn't jump over me. So it was me always being intentional about understanding how to counter what was being thrown at me. If they was coming at me with a right, okay, cool, I need to come back with the left. So but business, it's the same, right? It was me being intentional about understanding how to be intentional about first thinking through the business and understanding that, okay, if I'm building it this way, what are the things that I need to have so the walls can't be torn down? Like, let's go into a business. If I'm going to run a business, how much does it cost for me to live my life? Cool. At that time, I was 24 years old, and I'm going to go back and forth with this. And starting a business, I was 24 years old, and I said, okay, at this point, fast forward, I got 6 rental properties. Of these 6 rental properties, let's say I make $6,000 a month for even numbers. I can live off $6,000 a month. What's my credit score? Got a 720. Boom, that should help me. What's my savings? I got enough to get through the business. All right, I got enough residual income to take care of myself, so I'm not relying on the business income, right? I got credit, so that'll help me with some things with the business. And I got some savings that'll help me with the business. Now I got time to go out there, work hard, learn, get better, right? So I set a foundation for myself the same way I did on the basketball court. I set that same foundation for myself when I started off becoming an entrepreneur, right? To both of you guys' point, it's a mental exercise as you evolve from, because listen, 90% of the people aren't going to the NBA, or 90% of the people aren't going to play professional sports. But what's happening is we have to take the skill sets that's learned in the skate park, on the field, on a court. We have to take that and transfer it into the real playing field of life, right? And then the other thing that's really important is you start talking about the idea of dreaming, right? The biggest issue with most minorities, right, is we don't have anyone around us within our immediate circle to show us that we should dream big. Big to me, at that time, I was infatuated with this idea of $100,000 when I was selling drugs, right? So I started seriously selling drugs when I was 17. And it took me a couple months to make $100,000. And then I scratched my head and said, this can't be all life is about, right? So when I say, like, okay, I'm willing to risk my freedom. This is when it hit me. I'm willing to risk my freedom, risk my livelihood, risk my life for this. But that's why I said to the point about failures and choices. Psychologically at that time, I was failing myself. And I surrounded myself with people who justified my failure. People who applauded me for doing what they were doing instead of pushing me to make different choices. So the psychological part, and like trying to unpack that as a juvenile, like when you're making bad choices as a kid, there's gonna be friends around you who support your bad choices because those are the choices they're also making. So it requires you to be a leader and say to yourself, like, hey, I made a bad choice. Something bad shouldn't need to happen for you to stop. We got to have the restraint to say, I made a bad choice. I'm not going to continue to make that bad choice. And I'm not going to surround myself with people who make bad choices. So that's one part. Going back to dreaming, the other part is like, the thing that I got to challenge the adults in the room is to not put our self-proposed ceilings on the next generation. There's nothing that says there's 12 people on this call. Everybody on this call could be a trillionaire, not a billionaire, right? It's not about if, it's just simply about how do you plan to get there? Is it tough? Hell yeah, it's tough. It's also, somebody said at some point, it was probably impossible for NBA team to make 63s a game, or however many NBA games to have 63s, or however many threes they shoot now. Because in the 80s, that's not how the game was played, right? Last time I checked, Jeff Bezos exists. He got $176 billion or some stuff like that, right? So the idea that it's not about money, but it is about not putting ceilings on our way of thinking. Because when you put these self-proposed ceilings on yourself, if you're sure and you say, well, I just want to be able to do 3 tricks. No, who's the best in the business and why can't you be better? That makes sense. Like aim, shoot for, if there's someone in the industry, be mindful of where you are and who's above you, but also be mindful of what the top looks like. And don't just say to yourself like, hey, I just want to be better than the people that's in my circle. No. For me, when I enter into the business world, I'm in the business world. So I'm looking up every day at Warren Buffett. I'm looking up every day at Jeff Bezos. I'm looking at the open market. I'm understanding what's happening in nonprofit. I'm understanding what's happening in for-profit. I need to understand what's happening in tech, just so I can wrap my mind around what's the potential. What is my potential, or simply the fact that there is none. I don't have a ceiling. You can get and become anything you dream, and not the smallest version of it, but the largest version of it, if that makes sense.